Hi everyone, today we're here at the Village. We've got one of our first in a series of lunchtime talks on design thinking and where it meets change management. And this is part of a series of events run by Change Hacks and sponsored by Allegra Consulting on specific topics that you, the change community, have expressed interest in. We'll be running a series of events which you can find on our website, and also we have a great event at the end of June, which is the Think Tank for 2017, which would be a fantastic event for all of you to come to, looking at the future of change management and emerging capabilities.
Welcome everybody. I'm Lena Ross from Change Hacks, and I'm here with Allegra Consulting to do the first Lunch and Learn for 2017, which is where design thinking meets change management. So the purpose of today is to give you a little bit of an intro and a taste of design thinking. Okay, so design thinking. It's going to be like a speed date with design thinking because obviously it is a lunchtime session and you need to be back at your desks, most of you, by a certain time. But I guess the first thing I want to say about design thinking is when I first started to learn a lot about it a couple of years ago, now I cannot imagine delivering change without it. Okay, so it's like one of those things that once you know something, you can't unlearn it and not know it anymore. You think, okay, I know this now, I've got to be able to use it. So that was a key message I wanted to get across. And the reason that we need to look to these new capabilities like design thinking is, particularly this one aligns well with agile practices, and I'll talk about how and why. It really engenders deep engagement very early in the change cycle, and it gives us an opportunity to refresh our approach and deepen and add to our toolkit as well. And change is changing, and we know change is changing because of the external business environment and the future of work and what that's doing to what we do. So I'll talk a little bit about change is changing and what type of mastery we need in this new world. And then I'll define design thinking very quickly for the uninitiated. Now, does everyone here know what it is, or are you happy for me to walk through a walkthrough? Okay, I'll definitely do a walkthrough, and there's more resources obviously on my website, so I'll do all this. And then I'll talk about the intersection of change management and design thinking, and when I do that, I will go to a clip that I did with a guy from Monash Uni who is a professor. He's an expert on design thinking, and how we both spoke about that in one of our change chats online. Now, I don't know if has anyone seen that already? Lara, you've seen it? Okay, so Lara, maybe 10 minutes that you can either tune out or rewatch. Because it really just brings the summary together, and you hear his view of what it is and then my view with the business perspective. So it's kind of a good summary, and then how to find out more. So you've all heard of VUCA? No? Okay. VUCA is the state of play now in the world out there. So it's a commonly used acronym now about what the world is like, and particularly the business world, where we've got volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity. And with VUCA, we know that now things are expected to happen faster. Disruptors are out disrupting organisations like NAB and universities and organisations that have been around a long time. Like if you think Uber, Airbnb, your typical disruptors. And the other thing when I talk about VUCA is I say not only is change the new normal, but the disruptors are now being disrupted by the next generation. So it's constant. And it means that our role probably requires different skills to go at that pace and to be a lot more iterative in what we do with shorter cycles. So I call that change is the new normal. And when change is the new normal, there's a quick description, if you like, of VUCA. I'll just give you a minute to look at that. And Diane, I could probably make this presentation available. I can put it on SlideShare or something if people want to look at it later. When we take a closer look at design thinking, we're going to see how it's a mindset that helps you navigate this world. Because a fixed mindset and this world are not very good friends. Okay, it's the growth mindset that is going to marry VUCA in a date if we use a dating world. Okay, so you need to start thinking differently, and design thinking actually helps us do that because it helps us start with the unknown, whereas a lot of people think they have to start by knowing everything. So this is where it's a little bit different, and that's why I like to talk about the context of VUCA. And the other thing that's playing out in the future of work is, I don't know if any of you have seen Jeremy Hyman's TED Talk, which is What New Power Looks Like. How many of you have seen that? It's a really good one to watch. It's how our old models of hierarchy and power in organisations are being disrupted by all the elements that are bringing in the future of work. And when I talk about that, it's millennials, it's globalisation, it's digital literacy, it's use of people are using infographics now to communicate, and visuals, and enterprise social networks like Yammer. So much is happening now that power now is not held by the few. Remember the old saying, oh, knowledge is power, as they sat smugly in their corner offices, right? And now knowledge is spread and available to everyone, so that's very, very disruptive. Now, this means that change people have to think about different ways of engagement, because the old top-down approach, comms model, where you would normally get the message out through your sponsor, and a cascade approach still holds a little bit of water, but we have to consider what's going on with the new power and who those new influences are in that new world. Design thinking, again, is very compatible with that new thinking, because you reach those people. You have the approaches and the mechanisms to reach those people who have the new power. So it means we need to think a little bit differently about how we do the whole engagement piece as well. Is it making sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay, you can stop me for questions while I'm going through, by the way. Everyone's gone really quiet. Okay, so I've done a paper called High Five of Change Mastery, and design thinking is identified as one of those 5 that I think change practitioners need for the new world. That's on my website if you want to see the High Five, the whole white paper. You can see the others: future of work, agile mindset and practice, digital literacy and hardwired behaviour. But today we're on about design thinking, so let's go to that. And this is my definition of design thinking as a capability for change people. So we've got a situation where design thinking is something that has been used quite traditionally or conventionally for customers and developing customer solutions. But design thinking in a change manager's context or the change management world is we are also developing solutions for employees. So it's that mindset too. The employee and the customer are our customers. Most of the time we're developing solutions and identifying the pain points for our employees. So it's that tweaking in our thinking as well. So that's why where we can use some of the principles around design thinking to really help with our capability and how we deliver change in an engaging way. Now, if I was to define design thinking, this is the one picture that does it for me. Okay, we design something, and then we find out later that it didn't quite work. And now that I know about design thinking, I see things that are not designed well all the time. It's awful. It's like my brain is now switched on to things that don't work well. Okay, so what is design thinking and what is it not? Now, this is an interesting conversation I had with Dr. Jean Borden from Monash that we're going to see in the clip very soon, because a lot of people hear the word design and they think there's an art design element to it, and then they think that an artefact needs to be produced. But it's not necessarily about an artefact. It's more, if we think of it more of an approach, and then if there is an artefact at the end or something we can feel and touch, well then that's because that particular journey had that. For example, a Mikey card could be an artefact if we did that. So it's really, let's think of it as a framework for engagement and a mindset where we go in not knowing all the answers. So we're going into a place of ambiguity and we're going in to define the problem and uncover the solution. So that's what it's, because it's quite handy to know what it's not. And at a very high level, design thinking has 5 steps. So the D School at Stanford has some really good material on this, but these are the 5 steps that I work through when I run the half-day workshops. And this is what you tend to do at the 5 steps. So if you're a change practitioner, for example, your discovery phase would be doing a lot of brainstorming with your end users to start to define what the problem is and their point of view, and then developing a persona and possibly a journey map. So at the empathy phase, you're really starting to uncover what their pain points are. And there's tools and templates that go with all of these, which is more around the how. But this is really the why. This is what we can find. So we start with a very open mind, and then we narrow it again when we define the problem and the point of view and the person. And then we ideate, which is brainstorming, which means we flare out again. and look for as many ideas as we can, and then we narrow it again to prototype to come up with that what's called a minimum viable product. So you can see now how this agile and this world are definitely on the same page. Makes a lot of sense to use this approach. This is an iterative approach. Design thinking is an iterative approach that goes in without assumptions and co-creates the identification of the problem and then the solution. I don't go in often if I think the organisation is a little on the immature side and go, I'm going to do design thinking which is aligned with agile, and here's the 5 steps and this is what we're going to do. Okay, you're a little more by stealth. You can say, like to run a workshop that's got this approach where we want to uncover what our people are doing, thinking and feeling now about the change and what we want them to be doing, thinking, feeling. And I think if I take this approach, we're going to get them involved and we'll really start to uncover their pain points. So, it's the language you use where you go in softly. So it's sometimes you're coaching by modelling something. But if you go in and start doing I want to take this approach and here's the 5 steps, blah, 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 this is why we have to do it, that can disenfranchise people. So it's sussing out where that organisation's at. Now, I did this at an organisation that potentially would have had the mindset to adopt design thinking, but I didn't go in and start saying this is what I'm doing design thinking. I said this is what I'd like to do to complete the piece of work I need to do. This is the approach I want to take. I want to involve everyone. I want to have this up on a big wall that was as big as this. And I want them to come up with post-it notes even after the workshop so they feel like they own this and they're going to keep adding stuff. And I want to know what their pain points are and what they like. No, there was a bit more detail than this, but this is like roughly the framework. Now, what this does that a lot of other things don't do is it legitimises a conversation about emotions and feelings that are otherwise not uncovered when you do your day-to-day stuff, and a lot of people don't, I don't talk about feelings, and emotions, but this legitimises that conversation because you have a framework. So then all of a sudden it's okay to, you're saying to people, we want to know this because we want to get the big picture. I use it for metrics as well. So I've got, how do I know that change is successful or I'm on the right track is if I'm doing these things before implementation, and then if they're doing these things after implementation through the doing, thinking and feeling lens. Again, it helps open up that conversation about if you're going to be feeling quite crappy by the time we land this change, what role can you play or can I play or your leader play to make it better? And then that opens up that conversation there and then. It's very deep empathy stuff, and you can see how it is a mindset shift for a lot of people. But you asked Lara, how do I introduce it to an organisation that's not quite mature? The journey map is a nice way of doing it. It's a soft way of doing it because it's a facilitated workshop, and it's a bit like an impact assessment. It's really an impact discovery workshop, but you're just using a different frame for it. So the way I have framed that is, this is the change that we're proposing. And if it's through the impact lens, we need to understand what you're doing, thinking and feeling now. This is the change we're proposing. Imagine yourself in this state now. What are you doing, thinking and feeling? If you're not thinking very positively about it or feeling very good about it, tell us now why, because there might be some things we can do between now and then with your help to make this better for you. So it's framing. So I'm going to show the clip in a minute. So you can see this is the intersection now with change and with agile practices. It's early deep engagement. It's iterative. There's an experimental aspect to it. You do have to take a bit of a risk. You might hear stuff you don't want to hear, but it's better to hear. I always say better to hear it now than when I land the change. And it's very people centric. It's a very human centric practice. As a lot of business processes do. And I think sometimes change people have lost sight of it. Thanks for coming along to today's Lunch and Learn. Hope you had a great time. Keep an eye on Allegra Consulting's website for more of these events. We've got some breakfast events, we've got some lunchtime events, and we also have half-day workshops and webinars. So a lot of stuff going on out there for uplifting change capability. There's a great half-day workshop coming up on this topic of where design thinking meets change management. It's happening in May, and that's where we're going to deep dive into the how. You can find out more about how to register for this on Allegra Consulting's website.